By who?
Supervisors.
Which supervisor?
I cannot remember at the time, sir.
But it would have to be either Garcia or Baldock?
One of the two.
Is that standard operating procedure as you understand it?
Yes, sir.
Do you know if y'all have any procedures for when you pull over a car? Do you ask people if they have a gun in the car?
Yes.
Do you automatically take that gun if they have one in the car?
Yes.
Do you treat that gun the same way?
The way with the incident?
Yes.
Yes.
So if you pull somebody over in a car and they tell you they have a gun, you take that gun, you unload it, and even if all you're doing is writing a ticket, it goes back in their trunk.
Yes.
How are they supposed to have it for lawful self-defense then after you're gone?
Once again, this is the way we were trained.
Okay. 100% no exceptions.
For the safety? Absolutely.
For the safety of who?
Officers.
What about the citizen's safety?
They're advised once we're done, they can go retrieve their gun.
So they have to get out on the side of the highway and go back and get the gun?
Whatever way they feel fit.
Okay. You'd agree walking around your car on the side of a highway is dangerous though, right?
I didn't hear you, sir?
You would agree that walking around your car on the side of a roadway is dangerous, right?
Yes, but we tell them not to stay. We tell them to pull off to the side, like a side street.
So you tell them to get back in their car?
That's our advice that we give them.
Okay. You tell them to go somewhere else to get their gun
Exactly.
out.
Whatever they choose to do, that's their right.
And that, to your understanding, that is policy of Miami Beach Police
That's
Department?
the way we're trained.
Okay. What if they say they don't want to open their trunk? What if they say they don't want to open their trunk?
Then we advise them, well, we put it in the back seat.
Okay. So everybody that day was required to either open their trunk or open their car for you to put their gun back in it?
Yes.
Or for one of the officers to put their gun
Just
back in
to
it?
put their firearm back on.
And that was so that you could feel safe?
Correct.
So you mentioned much earlier a very interesting term, sovereign citizens.
Yes, sir.
You dealt with those guys before?
Yes, sir.
Aren't they fun to deal with?
It's an experience.
All right. What have you had training from the department about sovereign citizens?
If I'm not mistaken, we had one training. Oh,
All right, so you had training from the department on sovereign citizens. Do you remember you had any training in police academy regarding sovereign citizens?
I believe so.
Can you describe for me things that you would consider either based on your own personal interaction? Well, let's do this. Let's do it one at a time. Based on your training, whether in police academy or from the city, describe to me characteristics of sovereign citizens, please.
They don't believe in government, and they don't believe in authority.
Were you trained that it is very dangerous when you're dealing with sovereign citizens?
Yes.
Now, you've already stated they don't believe in government or authority. Would you agree that a lot of the training memorandum that are put out about sovereign citizens are that many of them take that lack of belief in government and authority to the extent of officers should expect violent resistance from sovereign citizens?
You're trained that these people, yes, they will resist.
Would you agree that if you know a person is a sovereign citizen, if you have actual definitive information that a person is a sovereign citizen, you are going to be in a much even higher alert in dealing with that individual?
Objection of 4.
Yes, but we're always on high alert. But to get to that answer, yes.
I understand for example, every traffic stop, every citizen encounter is a potential danger, right?
Yes, anything can go from 0 to 60, almost a matter of seconds.
So even if you had encountered the 95-year-old grandmother in a wheelchair on the South Point Pier, you have to be cautious, right?
Yes.
But isn't there an extra level of caution that you take when you know somebody is a sovereign citizen?
Yes, you take it into consideration.
And if somebody identifies themselves as a sovereign citizen when you come up, you're going to go to a heightened level of alert too, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to throw out a few other things. Let's see if we can help further define some of those identifying characteristics of sovereign citizens. They generally don't have driver's licenses, right?
Typically, no, but I've encountered some that do.
Okay. Sometimes they'll even have like a little self-printed piece of paper that indicates they are their own person or own thing, right?
Yes, sir.
And they'll say that's their right to travel.
Yes.
That's a big one with them, right to travel, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm not driving, I'm traveling.
Yes.
Do you usually encounter sovereign citizens with concealed carry licenses?
In today's world, you just never know.
Do you usually find sovereign citizens quoting Florida statutes to you as opposed to their own idea of things?
In my experience, I've encountered one that actually knew some of the statutes, but always afraid that I don't go above that law.
Okay. Did you, after the incident was over, do you still believe these individuals were sovereign citizens or part of the sovereign citizen movement in any way?
Pending after the investigation was done, to my knowledge, no.
Okay. So after the investigation was over, they don't match the identifying criteria of sovereign citizens?
No, sir.
The only thing they ever said was Florida law allows us to do this and we're acting within the laws of the state of Florida.
I believe they mentioned that.
Objection to form.
I believe they mentioned that.
Okay. And that type of behavior and attitude would be completely inconsistent with what your training is on what a sovereign citizen would do, right?
Objection to form.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Coming over and turning off your body cams to have a discussion off camera.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you remember what that discussion was about?
I cannot remember. I know it was most likely about the investigation of what we have and what's going to happen and what's going on.
Okay.
But I can't remember, to my knowledge, what it was.
Well, why turn off your body camera to have a discussion about the investigation and what's going on?
Our department allows us.
What do they allow you? You say they allow you. What they allow you to do?
They
what?
allow you to pretty much, when officers talk among themselves, you're allowed to turn off your camera.
But now as we sit here, you don't remember what was said during that conversation.
Like I said, I know it was part of the investigation of whatever was said, but I can't remember the exact words.
Okay. You didn't write it in your report what was said.
No.
You didn't even talk about in your report that y'all even had a discussion off camera, did you?
Nope.
And now you don't remember what that discussion was.
No, sir. Not off the top of my head.
So if any other officer comes in here and does remember, their recollection is going to be better than yours.
Objection to the form of the question.
When it comes to that question.
Argumentative.
Sorry, what was your answer?
When it comes to that question.
But whether it was once or more, if you turned it off, it was so that you could have these side conversations with the other officers.
Correct.
Do you remember any conversation you had with any officer that day off camera while you were turning the cameras off?
I do remember that we talked about the statute that they were mentioning.
Okay.
That was mentioned in the conversation,
Okay.
you know.
That statute that they were mentioning being 790.25.
79.25.3. And like I said, and pretty much the supervisors, waiting on the command of the supervisors. They were just notifying that that's what we were waiting for.
Do you have any information that leads you to believe that they were not actually fishing that day?
No.
As far as you're concerned, they were fishing.
Objection to form.
From what I visually saw, yes.
They may have had alternative reasons for also being there, but you, from what you saw and what you observed, there was fishing happening.
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember any comments by any other officers, such as, let's see if we can find something to get these guys on?
Objection to form.
Like I said, it was spoken in reference what they were stating, and officers were doing the research.
Mm-hmm.
You can hear that talk. Like I said, I was with the firearms,
Right.
but I can hear the talk.
Okay. Did you witness any officer take pictures of any of the firearms?
I believe there was an officer that took pictures of the
Do you remember
firearms.
which officer that was?
I cannot remember.
Do you remember seeing any officers taking pictures of their these individuals that had concealed carry licenses?
That I can't remember if they took pictures of.
Do you remember anybody being instructed to go look at the sign that the park ranger was talking about?
To my top of my knowledge, no.
Well, you already told me you didn't do it. I was just asking if you heard
No,
anybody
I
else.
did not hear my.
Can't talk at the same time.
I was just asking if you heard anybody else be instructed to go look at the sign.
In my area, no.
And just so we're clear, you actually pointed it at them, not just down at Low Ready, right?
No, it
Objection in the form of the question.
was pointed directly at them.
Okay. Can you describe what Low Ready is?
Pretty much the gun is at low, below your face.
Since we have the fortune to have a videographer here, without your gun, please, could you hold your hands in approximately what the position of Low Ready would be?
Yes. Pretty much down to here.
Okay, but not actually pointing at anybody.
No, this is fully point, this is low ready.
And when you raise your arms up and say this is fully point, that is how you were pointing at these gentlemen when you approached them on the pier.
Correct.
Okay. And just so we're clear, any person doing that to another person without a legal basis to do so, that's called aggravated assault, right?
Objection in form.
Aggravated assault
Yes.
by law.
By law, it's aggravated assault. Okay. And touching another person without their consent or a valid legal reason to do so is called battery, right?
Objection in form.
By law.
And keeping somebody detained in a place without a legal reason to do so, that's called false imprisonment, right?
Objection in form.
By law.
Are you aware, did you believe on that day, sir, that the city had some ordinance that prohibited firearms from being on the pier?
Repeat the question, I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Did you believe on that day that the city had some ordinance or rule that prohibited firearms on the pier?
Not to my recollection.
You
I
didn't
can't remember, no.
Okay. And you didn't think there was some state law that prohibited firearms being on the pier?
From my experience, no.
So as far as you knew, the possession of firearms on that pier was a lawful thing?
Objection in the form of the question.
At the time, yes, from what you're stating, yes.
Okay. That's all I'm asking is, having the firearms out there was lawful, right?
Objection in form.
Yes.
But you also wanted to consider the totality of circumstances and investigate this circumstance and situation, right?
Yes.
Are you aware now, as you sit here today, that there's actually a state law that prohibits the city of Miami Beach from having its own rules or ordinances about firearms?
Repeat it again, I didn't hear you, that's what I
As
didn't
you sit
understand.
here today, are you aware that there is a state statute in Florida law that prohibits the city of Miami Beach from having its own rules, regulations, policies, or ordinances regarding firearms?
I know they have their ordinances.
You know who has what ordinances?
Miami Beach has their ordinance.
To your knowledge, does Miami Beach have an ordinance about firearms?
I cannot remember right now, no.
Okay. Are you aware that there is a state law that prohibits the city of Miami Beach from creating or enforcing any ordinances regarding firearms?
Objection in form.
Don't know.
You're not aware of that?
Not aware of that, no.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't rephrase it.
Back to the sovereign citizen question. Would you agree that calling somebody a sovereign citizen that isn't could endanger them in future encounters with police officers?
Objection in the form.
By calling them,
Would you agree that having a police record as being a sovereign citizen might create a heightened danger for a citizen in the future with a future police officer?
Objection in the form.
I wouldn't say so, but it would increase, like you had mentioned, the alert of dealing with an officer.
You would agree that people should not be identified as sovereign citizens in a police report if they're not sovereign citizens?
Objection in form.
They shouldn't if they're not. If they're not, no.
Now, you've mentioned several times today the world we live in today, the world as it is today. I don't think you were talking about COVID, right?
No.
Okay. Because we want to talk about in 2018 terms, because that's when this occurred, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, when you've said throughout this deposition, the world we live in, the way things are today, in terms of only stuff before that incident on June 24th, 2018, can you tell me what you mean when you say the world we live in today or the world as it is today?
Do you mean the time frame before the incident
Yes, sir.
or now?
Before the incident.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, you had the Parkland shooting.
Mm-hmm.
You had the man in El Paso. And you had multiple other instances that I can't remember off the top of my head.
You say multiple other instances. What do you mean multiple other
I
instances?
can't remember off the top of my head.
No.
Because I know I've seen the news and there was other shootings, police involved.
That's the phrase I was trying to get.
Yeah,
You say multiple other incidents. You mean multiple other shooting incidents.
shootings. I should have clarified. I'm sorry.
Your awareness of Parkland, your awareness of El Paso, your awareness of multiple other shooting incidents that had happened before June 24, 2018. Those other events happening means that you as an officer must take certain actions anytime you encounter an armed citizen.
Objection to form.
Yes,
That's what you're saying.
for our safety and the safety of the citizens.
Now, when you say for your safety and the safety of the citizens, do you mean the safety of the other citizens or the safety of the citizen with the firearm, or both?
Objection to form.
It can be both.
It can be both. Do you mean it as both?
Yes,
Okay.
you take everybody into circumstance.
So it's your position that when you encounter a citizen who is lawfully carrying a firearm, for both their safety and yours, you should take the firearm away from them.
Objection to form of the question.
Yes,
Object to the form of the question.
So it's your position that is it your position that you disarming a lawfully armed citizen somehow makes that citizen more safe?
Objection to the form of the question.
yes.
Why does that make that citizen more safe?
At the end of the day, because in the encounters, we don't want any encounters.
Okay.
All right. The more
What do you mean encounter?
and compliance. All right, and just comply. If everything clears, you'll be on your way.
Okay.
Because in our experience, people do tend to resist.
People who you are accusing of a crime tend to resist.
Objection to the form of the question.
It can be anything of a crime to even a stop.
Are you aware of any law that gives you the authority to take away some person's gun merely so you can check to see if that gun is stolen?
Once
Objection
again,
to the form of the question.
it depends on the circumstances, but like I said, we are trained for our safety and the safety of the citizens that you are disarmed, because once again, as police officers, we are lied to every day. Depending on what that investigation or why the reason we're stopping them, if they are armed, we have to take our policy and procedures of running checks and running checks on the firearm. Once again, just because the individual says, I'm a good person, people lie to us every day as police officers. So we want to verify that they have not convicted felons and the gun is not stolen or used in the committal of a crime. Why we do records check.
Do police officers lie?
Hmm?
Do police officers lie?
Objection to the form of the question. Argumentative.
No, he stated.
Yes.
He stated.
You can state
Yes.
what your intent was, and I
yes.
can put on the
Police
record
officers-
that you're
Nobody-
being argumentative.
Sorry,
so
sorry,
we're not going to
sorry.
talk altogether.
Nope.
And if you say no, I'm going to say yes. What? There's no question pending.
All right, let's go see. I'll try it again. Do police officers lie?
Objection to the form of the question.
Yes.
Argumentative.
Are you actually taught in the police academy that sometimes telling a lie to a suspect can elicit information you would not otherwise get?
To my recollection, yes.
So you're taught that lying is an effective technique to help investigate and discover criminal activity.
Objection to the form of the question.
Depending on the investigation.
Okay. And depending on whether the person truly is a good person or a bad person, they may lie about being a good person.
Yes.
Does the fact that some people lie mean that lawfully armed citizens have less of a right to keep their firearm with them?
Objection to the form of the question and argumentative.
Repeat the question so I understand a little bit better. I'm sorry.
You understand that people have a right in this country and in this state to carry a firearm in public in certain circumstances, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So given that they have that civil right, does the fact that some people lie to you about whether or not they're a good person justify you disarming every single person you encounter who is carrying a firearm?
Yes.
Objection, form of the question. I think Rob just texted me we lost him.
Okay, well, I tell you what, I want to take a break anyway, if y'all don't mind. I'm going to ask you a hypothetical. It's going to sound a little bit crazy, but if these gentlemen had been out there wearing black armbands with a swastika on them, would you have detained and searched them?
Objection to form.
If there was reason to suspicion.
What kind of suspicion would you have to detain such people?
Once again, it's any reason that we're called upon.
Okay. So the fact that you were called, and just so we're clear, I'm not trying to yell at you, I'm just trying to make sure Mr. Rosenwald can hear. The fact that you were called to the scene and that these men were armed, in your opinion, gave you the authority to detain them and search them?
Objection to form.
Investigate.
Okay. Gave you the authority to investigate.
Yes, sir.
Part of your investigation, though, was making the scene safe.
Yes.
And making the scene safe, according to your training, is disarm any person there with a firearm who is not a police officer.
Objection to form.
Yes.
That's your training.
Training, yes, because once again, I'm repeating, safety comes into play, the total circumstance comes into play. Once again, we have to investigate who these individuals and identify them. Just because they tell us one thing doesn't mean that's why we do our records check.
So I understand the totality of circumstances. Do you need anything other than the fact that they are armed and you were called to be able to disarm them?
Objection to the form.
Once again, it's part of pending the investigation, the reason we were called. By the details we were given from the call.